Halfway through spring practice, it looks like Notre Dame's defense is even deeper than we thought, but injuries, position battles, and a few breakout players are starting to reshape the depth chart. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome in to another edition of Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and thanks for getting your day started on Thursday, April 9th, by making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. And make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube or following on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to send in your questions for tomorrow's mailbag. You can do so in the YouTube comments, or you can hit me up on social media. All right, so on yesterday's show, we broke down the offensive depth chart at the halfway point of spring practice, and today we're doing the same exercise. We're just flipping it over to the defensive side of the ball. We're going to start with a deep dive into the defensive line, which is starting to look like a real strength with some young guys poised to make a move. Then we're going to shift to the secondary, where there is a lot of movement and competition that's still very much up in the air and will probably continue to be up in the air up until fall camp. And finally, we're going to wrap things up with a linebacker room that's been hit hard by injuries, but it still has a ton of upside. And to be clear, nothing is set in stone. Notre Dame is not going to release a depth chart or anything like that. But I think this is a fun exercise to sort of take stock in the roster and see where different positions are at, which position battles are still ongoing, and who's making a move up or down the depth chart. We're going to start off by looking at the left defensive end position. It was formerly known as the Viper position. Again, maybe Charlie Partridge is going to bring new vocabulary here for the positions on the defensive line, but it's going to be Boubacar Traore as a starter. Logan Thomas is behind him right now. And then you've got the true freshman, mid-year enrollee, Ebenezer Iwatade and Dominic Hulak. So Boubacar Traore has been having a great spring practice. It's what we would expect of him, considering he's going to be one of the best defensive ends in the country this season. Could have gone to the NFL after last season, decided to come back to Notre Dame. And he is going to be one of the most important players on this defense for Notre Dame. And I actually think it's becoming more apparent just how well Boubacar Traore has been playing, based on how Marcus Freeman and offensive line coach Joe Rudolph have talked about what redshirt freshman left tackle Will Black has been going up against in practice now that he is playing left tackle with the starters. When you have a new left tackle going up against Boubacar Traore, who's established himself, hell, he could be in the NFL right now if he had not gotten hurt against Louisville a couple of years ago. That's a tough ask, basically, to ask any player, let alone an experienced left tackle. But I think both of these players are going to be better off for it in the long run. Boubacar Traore doesn't need to, make a move necessarily or make any super impressive plays. He can probably rest up more than the other guys. But just the fact that he's going out there trying to be a dominant player every single day is really encouraging for his future. There's also been a lot of talk about Logan Thomas, his backup, and specifically Logan Thomas's weight. And look, I think it's totally fair to have some concerns about a 207-pound defensive end. Maybe Logan Thomas has put on a few pounds since Notre Dame released its roster ahead of spring practice, but still, that's pretty light. And he's going to have to add 15 to 20 pounds to be your prototypical to have the prototypical body of a defensive end at a major college football program. You're just not going to be able to stop the run at that weight consistently against some of the best teams in the country. Now, that being said, I still think Logan Thomas has a ton of potential. He's very fast. He's twitchy. He's a natural pass rusher. And when you look at his frame, he does look bigger than 207 pounds. As a matter of fact, the Notre Dame football social media account posted a picture on Wednesday of the entire defensive line. And yeah, compared to Keon Keeley or Bryce Young, Logan Thomas looks a little bit smaller, but he's still pretty big for his size. He's a good player. And I think it's less of a concern against some of the weaker opponents on the schedule, but it's probably not going to cut it against a playoff level offensive line, which is, the type of competition Notre Dame expects to play late in the season. So he's definitely going to have to bulk up. But then behind Thomas, you've got Iwatade, who actually came out before Hulak on the first day of spring practice, which is a little bit of a surprise just because Iwatade is 1 year younger. Now, granted, Hulak was hurt last year, but I think that kind of tells you how high the staff is on Iwatade and his freshman counterpart, Rodney Dunham. I still think Iwatade is very raw, but he does remind me of Boubacar Traore as a freshman. The traits just jump off the charts. He just needs some time to develop. And Traore also gave the starting offensive line fits when he was a freshman, and he came up with a big sack against Caleb Williams back in 2023. He only played 27 snaps on defense that season, but one of them was a critical play to end the first half against USC. So with Iwatade, I don't think he's going to make a huge impact on the team this fall, but he is going to be someone I'm going to continue to monitor because I think he has a super bright future. All right, now on the other side of the defensive line, the right defensive end, I think it's going to be Bryce Young. When I say I think it's going to be, I think this is kind of what we're looking at right here, right now in spring. Bryce Young, Keon Keeley, the transfer from Alabama, Rodney Dunham, and then Joseph Reif. All I'm going to say is do not sell your Bryce Young stock. If you bought a bunch of it last year like I did, do not sell it. He looks leaner, faster, and yet somehow stronger than he did last season. He even mentioned to the media that he's been able to put on some muscle and build strength while losing weight, so that's really encouraging. Obviously, I was way too high on him last year. I said that he could have a Stephon Tuitt level sophomore season. That obviously did not play out, but I expect big things from him this year. I think there's a pretty big gap between him and Keon Keeley right now compared to the starter and the first backup there at that right defensive end position, and that is not a knock on Keon Keeley at all. I just think Bryce Young is poised to have a breakout season just, 1 year later than I initially predicted. I think there might be a good competition brewing to be Young's backup because Rodney Dunham looks every bit like the 5-star he was as a recruit. He has stood out in several practices available to the media and has already put on 20 pounds since arriving on campus. But to me, what stands out the most about Rodney Dunham is what Chris Ash, the defensive coordinator, had to say about him. This is a quote from a couple weeks ago. I think the sky's the limit for him. It's obviously too early to tell, but for a freshman and what he's been able to do physically as well as fundamentally, it's been pretty impressive, end quote. He actually had more to say about it, but I thought that one segment really just kind of tells you how high Chris Ash is on Dunham as a player, and he does not throw around compliments often, especially for a freshman. So if Chris Ash is saying that about Rodney Dunham already, that speaks volumes. I fully expect Dunham to be part of the rotation this year at right defensive end. Maybe he could get some reps at left defensive end as well. And I think those reps are going to ramp up as the season goes along, and he's going to become more of a factor on the defense as they get later in the year. All right, now shifting to the interior, let's look at the defensive tackle and the nose tackle spots together. So at defensive tackle, I think it's going to be Jason Onye as the starter, although he is hurt. He's going to miss the rest of spring practice. And then Elijah Hughes, Christopher Burgess Jr., Cole Mullins, Elijah Golden. And then you've got the mid-year enrollee, Gordy Solfstead, but he is hurt. He's out for spring. And then at nose tackle, I think it's going to be Francis Brew, the transfer from Pittsburgh, Tiona Gray, transfer from Oregon, Armel Mukum, Sean Sevillano Jr., Davion Dixon, Brennan Vernon, and Tiki Hola, who is also hurt and is going to miss spring practice. Now, admittedly, this is a bit of a projection. In the first practice we saw during the spring, Elijah Hughes and Armel Mukum ran out there with the first team, followed by Jason Onye and Francis Brew, and then Tiona Gray and Christopher Burgess with the third team. Now, this was obviously before Jason Onye suffered his wrist injury too, so even though he's going to be out for spring, he was able to go for at least the first several practices of spring. And look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Elijah Hughes and Armel Mukum are going to be Notre Dame starters at defensive tackle when the season starts, but I just don't think that's going to be the case. On one hand, you could say that the coaching staff is making the transfers, Brew and Gray earn it, but that didn't stop them from putting Mylan Graham out there to run with the first-team offense during his first practice. I simply just find it hard to believe that Jason Onye and Francis Brew won't be the starters. Onye started the second half of last season, performed really well after Gabriel Rubio went down, and he also played nearly 100 snaps more than Elijah Hughes did last season. Plus, Francis Brew and Tiona Gray were big-time acquisitions for the Irish in the portal, and I don't think that the coaching staff brought them in to be second and third team players. They're too talented and, frankly, too well compensated on the NIL front to be the last guys in the rotation. And maybe I'm totally off base. Maybe Elijah Hughes and Armel Mukum have separated. If that's the case, it could be great because we've always known Armel Mukum has had great size and Elijah Hughes ended the year strong as well. But the most important thing here is whether it's Elijah Hughes and Armel Mukum going out there with the starters or Brew and Onye, it really doesn't matter. The most important thing is Notre Dame has 6 guys that they can count on to rotate frequently on the interior. They've got Brew, Onye, Gray, Hughes, Mookum, and apparently Christopher Burgess Jr., which is really exciting because Burgess has completely transformed his body. He looks like he's ready to make a huge leap in year 2. I really liked him as a recruit. I thought he was more of a defensive end. The coaching staff decided to shift him inside, and he has put on the necessary mass to succeed at that position. And then behind those guys, you've got other talented players like Cole Mullins, who's ready to make a move. Sean Sevillano Jr., he's competing really hard as well. It is a huge year for both of those guys, and if their number is called, I think they can make some plays. So with the moves that Notre Dame made in the portal, this position, the interior defensive line, went from a major concern to potentially a strength in the competition for snaps. Is going to persist all season long, and that's a great thing for this Irish defense. All right, that's the defensive line, and now let's get into the secondary where there's a lot of movement, a lot of cross-training, and still a lot to be decided. That's next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. And here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Plus, the app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. So I was going to give a pick for the finals, and the Thunder are massive favorites on FanDuel right now. They're plus 120 to win it all. So maybe I'm going to go with something different and pick the Spurs plus 500 to win it all. But if you remember, before the season started, I was giving out Victor Wembanyama MVP odds. Look, I still think it's going to be Shea, but hey, if you got him earlier on in the season, you might have some good value there. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back to Locked On Irish. Today, we are breaking down the defensive depth chart at the midpoint of spring practice. I also wanted to remind you that you can listen to the show ad-free if you join the Everydayer Club. Plus, you'll get access to the members-only Discord channel. Join today at LockedOnIrish.supercast.com or check the link in the show description. All right, we are now going to shift gears to the defensive backs, and I want to focus on nickel and field corner for a second because, honestly, they kind of go hand in hand. This has been very difficult to project for a few reasons. Right now, we'll say the depth chart at nickel goes like this. Dallas Golden, Christian Gray, Nick Reddish, and Jane Sanders. But Dallas Golden is hurt, or at least he sat out Wednesday's practice, which was available to the media. He was seen off with Orlando riding the bike. Christian Gray has been getting a lot of reps at nickel, which is something that we talked about before the start of spring practice, and he's been getting even more reps there now that Dallas Golden is down. Nick Reddish was having a pretty good start to the spring, but he is now hurt. He's going to miss the next 4 to 5 months after he had surgery on his labrum. And then Jane Sanders has been sort of cross-training there as well. And then at field corner, right now, if Dallas Golden is running out there with the ones, then I think you're going to see Christian Gray. And behind Gray, there's Aiden Pouncey, Chaz Smith, another mid-year enrollee, and then keep an eye on DJ McKinney, who is not there right now, but will join the team in the summer, much like Malachi Fields did for the Irish last season. Some of these transfers have to finish graduating at their other school before they are able to participate in practice, and DJ McKinney is one of those guys. So you have all kinds of guys playing different positions. Dallas Golden and Christian Gray have both run with the ones at nickel and at field corner. But with Golden being hurt and Nick Reddish being out as well, like Christian Gray is getting even more work at nickel. And it seems like he is trending to eventually be the starter. We're going to wait and see. I'm not ready to say that just yet, but it does kind of feel like that's where things are headed. But Jane Sanders has been getting reps there as well. And look, none of this is a surprise. As a matter of fact, this is exactly what you are supposed to do in spring practice. You're supposed to push the limits. You're supposed to see how guys perform at different positions just to make sure that you have the best players on the field at all times. And as much as we talk about the battle going on between Christian Gray and Dallas Golden and where they are best suited to play, we really won't be able to say anything definitively until DJ McKinney is in the fold. I just don't think they're going to cross-train McKinney as much at nickel. I could be wrong. I just don't think his frame or his skill set is best suited for that position, which is kind of why I was surprised when Notre Dame took him in the transfer portal because, I thought they were going to go the route that they've gone the past few years when, they took Devontae Smith last year from Alabama. He was a true nickel. Jordan Clark, same deal when they got him from Arizona State, and Thomas Harper at Oklahoma State too. All three of those guys played nickel primarily at their previous school, which is why when they took McKinney, it made a lot of people wonder, well, does that mean they're going to move Christian Gray inside? And I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning. I'm still a little bit skeptical, but obviously the coaches know a lot more than I do. And I just, I wish we could see a little bit more from Christian Gray, and we will in due time. But look, like last year, it wasn't great for Gray on the field corner spot, but he was also hurt, and just they didn't trust him to rotate with a freshman at that point in the season. So you have a guy like McKinney who's played a ton of football, over 2,000 snaps in his career. At one point was a projected first-round draft pick, and then last season didn't go super well for the Colorado Buffaloes, and now he's at Notre Dame. So you have a bunch of talented guys who can play field corner or nickel. It's just going to take some time, I think, and I think this is a competition that is going to go well into fall camp. They're probably not going to make a final decision here until the end of fall camp. They're going to have to make a decision at some point. Maybe they decide to make it going in, but I'd be surprised if they do that too, because you have all these other guys who are hurt, and they want an opportunity as well. So it's a fun battle. Certainly. I mean, Dallas Golden is a great athlete. He's one of the best athletes on the team. Christian Gray has been a 2-year starter at field corner. So if I had to bet today what is going to happen, I think Gray would probably win out at nickel, but I'm not certain. Again, do not count out Dallas Golden. He's a really good player. So I just think it's going to end up going Leonard Moore, boundary corner, Christian Gray at nickel, and then DJ McKinney at field corner, and then you're going to have Dallas Golden rotating heavily, maybe at both positions. Maybe Dallas Golden is the first guy off the bench at nickel and field corner. But let's talk about the other guys at that position, right? Because there's a ton of talent there. Aiden Pouncey, the freshman, has looked really good in spring practice so far. Notre Dame football, the social media account, just posted a video on Wednesday. He had a pick 6 in practice. It was in front of Micah Gilbert, who looks like a starter, but from what I could tell, CJ Carr was not the one throwing, so it was either Grubbs or Hebert. But with Pouncey, he's a stud athlete, although he's pretty light right now, just over 170 pounds despite being 6'3", so he needs to put on some weight. But, man, he's going to be a very good player down the line. And as I mentioned with Nick Reddish, good start to the spring, but suffered that torn labrum, so he's going to be out for a while. And Chaz Smith, haven't talked about him much yet. He's looked good as well, but there's just so much talent in front of him. I think it's going to take some time before he makes any sort of impact. All right, now let's shift to the boundary corner. Not nearly as much going on there because you have Leonard Moore and you know he's going to be the starter. The real question is, who is going to be his backup? Because you have Jane Sanders, the transfer from Michigan. You also have Mark Zachary, and they both have been cross-training as well, but between boundary and field. Sanders has gotten some reps at nickel. I think that mostly has to do with the fact that Reddish is hurt and Dallas Golden is hurt. But I think you're going to see Sanders and Zachary either at boundary or the field. And as a matter of fact, Zachary came out with the first-team unit as the boundary corner in the first practice of spring. But if you remember, Leonard Moore was hurt. But that shows you that, hey, if Leonard Moore goes down, they trust Zachary to go out there. Now, during the portion of practice that was available to the media on Wednesday, Mark Zachary went out with the starters at the field because Christian Gray was at nickel. So again, you have all kinds of moving parts in this situation. Mark Zachary played some field corner last year, but he also backed up Leonard Moore once he went down with that ankle sprain. And then with McKinney coming into play, I just expect Zachary to start to focus more on boundary because McKinney is a field corner. That's where he's going to be playing. And I was just really excited to see what these guys could do. And I was really excited to see what Kari Adams could do in spring practice. So it's unfortunate that we're going to have to wait until fall camp as he recovers from his surgery. But when I just look at the cornerback room as a whole, I think we're just going to see more rotation than we have in recent years. They have so many talented players that can play different spots. Leonard Moore, yeah, he's going to be playing boundary and he's going to be on the field all the time, right, during all the key moments. But given some of the weaker opponents on the schedule for Notre Dame, there may be some opportunities for Leonard Moore to get some rest during games and, get the other guys some run. So there's a bunch of talent there, a bunch of different options. Aaron Henry, Chris Ash, Marcus Freeman, the entire defensive staff, it's going to be tough to kind of figure out how all these pieces fit in the puzzle because there's just so many pieces and only so many spots. All right, now on to safety. Not a ton of movement here. Boundary safety, Adon Schuler's the starter. Luke Talich is his backup, and Brandon Logan is going to be third team. Now, he's been spending most of the spring with the baseball team because he is a stud baseball player, so we haven't seen a ton from him yet. And then at field safety, Tay Johnson, Ethan Long, and Joey O'Brien. Not much debate here. This is exactly how this group lined up last year. Obviously without Joe O'Brien, they had Jadon Blair last year. And I expect Luke Talich to get a lot of work in those dime packages. He's going to be the first safety off the field, or at least he is right now in this current depth chart. He's another big body that defenses have to account for. And I just think Luke Talich is a really underrated playmaker. He was 22nd in snaps on defense last year. He only played 205 snaps on defense. He rotated with Jalen Strome, the other backup safety. But Talich racked up 20 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 3 pass breakups in limited action. And it felt like every single play happened during a key moment. So he's just a damn good football player. So he's going to be in the mix, and I'm just going to be interested to see how Ethan Long and Joey O'Brien factor into that rotation, because to me, Joey O'Brien seems like he's too good of a player to keep off the field. But then again, that room is so talented. Do you really want to take reps away from Tay Johnson? Do you want to take reps away from Adon Schuler? Tay Johnson was the MVP of the first practice, and he has been playing at an extremely high level ever since then. He might even be better than Adon Schuler already, which is crazy because Schuler is a great safety who's been a 2-year starter at Notre Dame, a captain, and he's going to be drafted next season. But that's just how good Tay Johnson is. Right now, Notre Dame has 5 guys at safety who could come in and perform at a high level for 2 spots. That's a great place to be. And then you've got Brandon Logan, too. Do not count him out. He's been with the baseball team, but I could see him being a strong special teams contributor for the Irish in the fall because he is such a good athlete. But when you look at the guys that they have with Johnson and Schuler and Talich and Long and O'Brien and Logan, there's a good case to be made that safety might be the best position on Notre Dame, and they have a bunch of other really talented spots. All right, so we've covered the front and the back line of the defense. Now let's get to the linebacker room where the injuries have piled up, but there's still plenty of talent and guys fighting to crack the rotation. That's straight ahead.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. UCLA made history by winning its first NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship, dominating South Carolina 79-51. The Bruins controlled the game from start to finish with elite defense and balanced scoring, finishing the season 37-1. Star center Lauren Betts was named Most Outstanding Player, leading a team effort that capped a 31-game winning streak. Under head coach Corey Close, UCLA secured a landmark title that has been decades in the making. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, I'm coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
All right, let's wrap up the defensive depth chart by looking at the linebackers. So right now, at the Mike linebacker spot, Jane Osbury is out there running with the ones. His backup is Okia, and behind him, you've got another freshman, Thomas Davis Jr. Then at will linebacker, it's Jalen Sneed, a familiar face, Teddy Rizak, and Tommy Paulus. Now, you might be wondering, where's Drake Bowen, KVA, Madden Framo, Kahana Okia, and Jacoby Clapper? Well, they're all hurt. Notre Dame's linebackers have just been hammered with injuries this offseason. I'm talking like Homer Simpson at Moe's Tavern hammered. It's pretty crazy. Right now they have 6 available players and 5 guys who are hurt. Although, I should point out, Drake Bowen was able to suit up and practice on Wednesday coming off his hip surgery. He wasn't even in a red jersey, but he wasn't out there with a starter, so it's not like he's going full tilt or anything like that. But it is a step in the right direction for Notre Dame starting Mike linebacker and captain. As we talked about a couple shows ago, Jane Osbury has been getting a lot of work at Mike this spring because they need someone there. But now that Bowen is back out there, I expect to probably go back to playing more will, except for when they're in the team drills and Bowen still can't go out there. But once Drake Bowen, Kingston Viliamu Asa, and Matt Framo are all healthy again, those guys are going to be your top 3 at Mike. And you could also see someone like a KVA work in at will as well, because with only 2 positions and so many guys in the room, I think each player is expected to know and understand both the Mike and Will linebacker spots. This isn't like, when Notre Dame had the rover position. I think they've just abandoned that entirely because they're going to be in nickel way more often than not. But when the season starts, I do expect Jane Osbury to be out there as the starting Will linebacker to begin this season, with Jalen Sneed right behind him. Once Kingston Viliamu-Asa is healthy, obviously that's going to change some things. And I was really looking forward to seeing what Kahana Kia could do this spring because he's an older veteran guy. I pointed out before he committed to Notre Dame just days after the Irish knocked off Clemson with Ian Book as a starting quarterback. And in this day and age of college football, having old guys helps. But due to his 2-year mission trip and the fact that he missed the entire 2024 season due to injury, Count.The has barely played. So I think now that he's been able to stay healthy somewhat, but then he's still dealing with this other injury. So it hasn't really worked out for Kahanu. However, it sounds like Ko'okia, his younger brother, has taken a big step forward, and it's going to be hard to keep him off the field as well. When this group is healthy, I think it's legitimately one of the best in the entire country. They have so many good players, but they're thin right now. I mean, Thomas Davis Jr. and Tommy Paulus are probably going to be on the scout team this season, even though Thomas Davis Jr. was a pretty highly rated recruit. But for now, they have to rotate in, which is actually a plus for their long-term development. But if you're Notre Dame, you would like for the guys that you know you're going to be counting on this fall to get those extra reps in practice. But overall, I'm not really worried about the injuries right now at linebacker because everyone other than KVA should be fully ready to go by the start of the season. Most of these guys are going to be ready in the summer as well. And as we discussed on Tuesday's show, like Jane Osbury can benefit from playing Mike and taking on a leadership role and being more vocal. And it also allows Jalen Sneed to get some reps with the ones and not just be like a pass rushing specialist or a third down player or things like that, because he is so talented. And it was so important for Notre Dame to get him back for his 5th season once KVA went down. We have seen Notre Dame run a 5-man rotation at linebacker for the past 2 seasons, and I don't expect that to change in 2026. Maybe they stretch it out a little bit, but I doubt it. Even if a guy like Ko'okia is really pushing for playing time, 5 is a lot for 2 spots. You just don't want to have Drake Bowen off the field that often. You don't want KVA off the field when he's healthy. And Osbury and Sneed are guys that need some snaps. And if Manfremo is able to recover from this wrist injury that has been sort of plaguing him for the past 2 seasons, I mean, dating back to his high school days, he played his entire senior season with like a giant club on his wrist because that's when the wrist injury started. And then he played for the Irish last season, but he finally had surgery to hopefully fix it up for good. So those are 5 extremely talented guys. I just would say keep an eye on one of these Kias, man, because they're gamers. Notre Dame has had a great track record with Hawaiian linebackers, as you may have heard, and one of them, Kahano or Ko'o, might be next. All right, that's going to do it for me today. As always, thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you enjoy the show, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow on your favorite podcast platform, and if you're watching on YouTube, give the video a like, or if you're listening to the podcast, rate the show 5 stars and leave a review. And don't forget to submit your mailbag questions for tomorrow. You could drop them in the YouTube comments, hit me up on X at LockedOnIrish, or send them in on Instagram DMs at LockedOnIrishPod. And if you never miss an episode, join the Everydayer Club for ad-free shows and exclusive Discord access at LockedOnIrish.supercast.com. I'll be back tomorrow with the mailbag. I'll see you then.